Want to have your chair that low? You look like a little small.
Munchkin.
These are fancy
Just
chairs.
the chair next to you too.
It's on your right.
There you go. We just wanted.
Chair befitting the chin.
Feel like Alice in Wonderland. I believe Beth is coming, but, we've heard from Robin and Nancy and Alyssa that they're not able to come, so Mara is stepping in to take notes, which we appreciate. Thank you, Mara.
Thank you, Mara.
So, a couple of things that we'll try to, we've got a lot on the agenda. There's a number of announcements we can make. I believe we will have, Deborah, who you met last time at the Ferry House, is coming on because they have done the Ferry House. We'll show you pictures of the Ferry House sculpture, show you pictures of it. And we want to make some recommendations to the council about where it would go. We're finally gonna get to the temporary art guide. Yay! Ernie and I both have a lot probably to catch you up on with Bohenko Park. Possibilities and some ideas. We want to talk a little bit about the city manager's a request that we do a rotating art exhibit for the lobby, and we thought we would have a discussion just about what are some of the things we should be thinking about, questions we might need to have answered, considerations we should have, so that we kind of, again, we sort of spelled out everything we need to know about it before, we launch it. And then, again, if we have some time, we'd love to get to starting to talk about the garage. So let's start with minutes of March 26th, the motion to approve those. So I like this one. Yes, let's do a second and then, okay, let me, move.
Second. Oh.
Second, Ellen, questions.
Okay, the community campus, regarding the Button project.
Yes.
Okay. The community campus is enthusiastic about receiving it, didn't you bring up some lack of enthusiasm?
You're actually, it was the recreation department, I think, right?
And that was unenthusiastic.
No, that was enthusiastic.
Okay, so it was the recreation department.
So we should change that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes,
Yeah.
I missed that.
Yeah, I missed that too.
Good guy.
So we'll make that correction before they get posted.
I'll make that
You wanna
change.
make that?
Yep, I'll make that change. Do you have to mention the change or just can you say accepted as correct?
Accepted.
Accepted with correction.
Can I ask a favor if you speak into the?
Oh.
And you too. You
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for that point.
Yes, it is sometimes hard to hear on the tape because especially as we get talking. So-
Right, okay, good.
So let's do the vote to accept the minutes as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, a few updates. Pierce Island, do you want to show the photographs? The real progress.
Yes.
There right away, yeah.
Alright, so let me go to
Is this from them?
Yeah, you'll see.
share. Share.
There we go.
Oh, cool.
So, what did they say percentage wise, like 70% or something on the fabrication? So you can see the spiral
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great.
and where they're welding. Those posts are where they're welding the different sections together. Oops.
Whoops.
I think both Sean and I had been under the impression that they would be able to do that up here and truck it up in sections, but they decided that they needed to prepare it. The fabricators who were in Texas needed to weld the sections together. These aren't great photos. You can, if you looked really closely, you could start to see how, the leaf tops
Yep.
Mhm.
are cut.
So are they gonna truck it up
I was
on
gonna
one
say.
big
What's that?
trailer?
What did Vito say? Vito said, he goes, when I saw it, I was very impressed. Ain't funny.
So noticed.
Cause he, he imagined it, right? And then
Yeah.
the fabricators came through.
Right,
Of course, it hasn't been painted yet.
right.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It's very cool.
He was very, they're all very enthusiastic about it. But yes, it's going to be trucked up.
From
Yeah.
where is it?
Texas.
Texas.
In one piece? That's one big truck.
Yeah.
It's one big truck.
You're using a low boy. You know what a low boy is?
Yeah.
So you have a flatbed truck,
Yeah.
no sides. You have a flatbed over the wheels, and then the midsection is lower, and it goes back over the second set of axles so that you can get more height versus just putting it on a platform.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Low boy, that's the technical
Well,
term.
just in terms of the wind and other
Yeah.
Sure.
things.
But they have to get permissions from different states.
To pass
It's-
Whole thing.
It's a whole thing. And Sean knows a lot about this.
I can tell. You know, the low boy
trucking,
is.
But so of course, we're trying to get timing.
Mhm.
And as far as we can tell, well, we know sooner than July. Is that your?
Right. Mirko estimates another month of fabrication
Painting?
and painting layers on it, and then we'll see what their transportation plan is. It'll be lifted on a crane onto said low boy and trucked, and then we have to get it off of that and get it to our location. So there's lots of detail, I'm sure, that that we haven't spelled out.
Right.
So if it's not going to be assembled in pieces as we originally thought, and it's
That's
one
right.
big piece, like to your point, they're gonna have to get it off the truck and onto the exact site.
Mhm.
Ooh, with a big
Might be
screen.
some damage to the lawn that has to be repaired, or, I mean, there must be some heavy equipment that they're gonna need to lift it.
There's a lot of detail we need to,
Yeah. So Mirko is working on a memo about all of
Yes,
those
the
details.
size, the
which
weight.
We can then work with Public Works on, because ideally, they will send a crew of 3, the crew that they always use to install these things. But we will need to have some other
Yeah.
people standing by and helping out with this, because it'll be quite an entity. And they will do some documentation on their side, and we'll want to document also.
I'll be taking orders for custom hard hats for park.
Cool.
Yeah.
Make mine orange.
But one thing, based on that conversation, Vito is out of the country until the end of September. And so we were thinking that we probably want to wait a formal ceremony dedication where we'd have some chances to have presentations and stuff until he's back in the country. He would very much like to come, and the fact that they've done these things all over the world, I think he'd be a wonderful speaker for an evening we could have at the library or something like that. And early October or something like that, which would still be good. Maybe when the pool is closed.
That would
Because it's so
Oh.
close to
That'd
the
be a good
pool,
thought.
so that we're timing it.
Parking
Right.
will be better.
He's a public speaker, isn't he? Isn't that part of what his
That's part of
package
his
is?
deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
He'll be great.
yeah, like a futuristic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they would. I'm assuming they're going to wrap this thing,
I have no idea.
because can you imagine the noise that would make when the wind flows through that?
That's an
I'm sure it'll be
interesting
wrapped.
point.
Sure.
It must be, because, it's going to be painted and you don't want it to be chipped,
Right.
flying rocks or something
Right.
like that.
I hope they take pictures along the way, because that would be so fun to have
They said they
documented.
will, because we brought that up and they will, and then
Mm-hmm.
we will on site. So I think it'll be good to let several photographers know about it. Be very interested. Oh, and right on time, Deborah.
Chris,
I have a
Yeah.
question. At one point when we were making the decision on this piece of art, you had instructed us not to think about like seating around it as part, because that could be dealt
We could deal with
separately.
that separately, benches. you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming there must be some kind of lead time and a request timing to do that. It doesn't have to align right when it's put
It's an
in,
interesting
but
question. I
that's a-
know from being on the council that the council often gets requests to have memorial benches placed in different places that, you know, particularly Prescott Park, we probably have too many in Prescott
Yeah.
Park, but people want to um, endow a bench for that, and this would be
perfect.
It would be
Yeah,
great.
really.
Few other announcements, the Ona Judge, we just wanted to convey to people how happy Barbara was with our discussion with her. She was so pleased to have people who appreciated what they had done, and what they were going to do. After the discussion, they decided they wanted to do more research on the panels because of remember the texture question?
Oh, yeah.
And so they decided to delay their HDC meeting until this May meeting because they wanted to be able to be clearer about what the panels were. I don't know where they are on that. But I thought that was interesting. The Cabot Lyford exhibit, if you haven't seen it, please, it is really a wonderful, wonderful exhibit. And it certainly would get people interested in public art in Portsmouth. Beautiful catalog that goes along with it, that the last chapter of which is about contemporary art, like the Endeavor is in there and other pieces are in there. So it's really worth seeing. And then
And just so people know, that's at the Portsmouth Historical Society.
and we'll be there through the fall, I think, right, Ellen?
I think it's leaving before that.
Okay.
I will investigate that while you continue talking and once I.
African Burying Ground, the art pieces are all scheduled. The Jerome Meadows, who originally did the Sankofa, has recreated the tiles. And a tile artist from here is going to install them next week. But presuming weather is good, because it takes like 3 days so that'll be great, because if you've seen how chipped that is. And then I believe it's the week after that when the firm Daedalus, that is the well-known sculpture firm, will come up to re-wax the bronze, refinish the figures at the end, scrape out where the petition line is. It gets filled in with little things over time. They'll scrape that out and repaint black inside, so it's very visible. So all of those things have worked out, which is good. The one thing yet to be done, and Corin and I just talked about this, is and he'll talk to Daedalus about this, reprinting the tiles that the students did. Anna, not all the middle school art teacher, has all of the artwork, and the tiles can be reprinted. If you look closely, a number of them are chipped or cracked, and they're faded. So all of that is in good shape.
Can I ask a question as a point of information, just to assess how long something lasted?
Yeah.
When was, I can't remember exactly.
Years.
10 years, okay.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And I actually hope I hope to like observe some of it, because I think the more we learn about maintenance, like what Daedalus is actually doing, what the costs are, maybe we can have Corin come and talk to us about that so that we all have a better understanding of what it takes. It's a really good point, Laura.
Can you let us know when those things are happening so we can, if we walk by or can just,
Yeah.
we don't have to watch all day, but just have an idea
Happening
what they're
now.
doing.
They have a deadline, right?
Well, it's going to be done by Juneteenth, right?
Yes,
Oh, yes.
that is the deadline.
Yeah.
In the
Oh,
next
yeah.
couple weeks, but specifically, yeah,
Right.
I'll see if Corin will give us a schedule, because I do think it's interesting to see that.
Mhm.
And then actually, Ernie, why don't you mention about the Bohinkel maintenance, is what you noticed and.
Yeah, so I just went down to the park a couple of weeks ago and I noticed that the codfish there was discoloration, like on a lot of them. It was like it was almost like a coating, the silver was coming off. And so I emailed Terrence, who was, of course, already on top of it and had already repainted them. So we're all set with that. But I had asked him, Chris mentioned that she wonders if that area, because the salt piles are so close by, that if that's
With the wind that we've had,
yeah.
you know, it's like wearing things down.
Oh,
I know,
yeah.
I told Ernie, I had a friend who parked her car there along that line one winter a lot and ruined the whole
Sure.
finish of
Yeah.
the car.
Wow.
In it with salt, so.
Yeah. Terrence didn't think
He
that
didn't
that
think so.
would have impacted it, but I don't know. And then the plaque, and was Corin gonna be here today or?
We thought so, but
Okay, all right, because I wanted to ask about the finish. You know, I think I already reported that the Endeavor plaque, I went there and it was on, you know, it was knocked over. And the city has reinforced that. It really needed, it didn't have any posts on the back. It just was a sheet of metal. And so they had some posts made, but the coating is peeling. And I'm just wondering, I was gonna ask Corin, and I can email him,
Yeah.
but if there's anything we can do to fix that.
yeah, and also to learn about, again, it's same thing, to learn about what is the coding and so that we can be better prepared to ask questions.
Because
You also mentioned Terrence had reinforced the how the fish are connected to each other,
yes, yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah.
so they can't move as much.
Yeah.
So Terrence, Terrence is on it and, you know, he's so great to work with. And is another aspect. He takes great pride and he's keeping an eye on it.
Well, I'm sure that he had to learn how the sculptures, you know, the individual objects behaved in all kinds of weather. And so it must be challenging to have to, I mean, you do your research, but then when you put something there.
Yeah, sometimes you have to revisit it. And it's just so cool to see that because they really look like they're a school of fish
Yeah,
moving.
right.
It's just, it worked out. And I'm not sure that was part of his original design, but it really,
I think it was.
I mean, it must have been.
Yeah.
It's been really windy.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But seeing them, it like, you know, when the light is on it is really, yeah, I mean, seeing them be blue, it's just,
Yeah.
it's really,
I haven't seen that yet. I
just have to go out at night sometime.
Yeah, I haven't been there.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and I think Deborah has joined us.
I will admit them.
Okay, admit that,
And,
yeah.
I can answer the question now, so before we leave this section about how long the Cabot Lyford
Oh,
exhibit
yes, how
is
long
up.
is it?
No, April 1st through November 2nd.
Oh,
the
wow,
fall.
that's
Yes.
good.
So just,
Excellent.
that's on the record now.
Oh, Deborah and Mary, you're here just in time.
Perfect.
There they are. And so if you want to go to the next slide, Sean. All right, so these are the photographs that Deborah sent to me. They were able to use their funds to complete the Ferry House sculpture, so you can see from all different, the full dimensions, 46 inches high, 16 inches diameter at the base. And so our task is to recommend to the city council one or more locations. We don't have to, you know, we don't have to only narrow it to one. If you remember when we reviewed it before, we had some concerns about location based on, you know, kids climbing on it or chipping off something. And Corin had some suggestions about a location. I mean, I'll open it up obviously for discussion, but I wanted to show you two places that Corin thought might be good that are not in the park, but are in the south end. If you want to go to the next piece, and let me orient you, the bottom arrow is the Children's Museum. And so one possibility is at the, well, I'm sorry to call it the Children's
South
Museum, the
Meeting
South
House.
Meeting House. The South Meeting House, which as I think most of you know, is being rehabilitated, renovated to become the Visual Arts Center that PMAC will use. The city will still own the property, but there'll be a long-term lease on that. So one thought is somewhere on that space for protection. It could be on the porch, or it could be as you face the South Meeting House, the land slopes down. It could be on the height there, you know, being sort of a marker. But we also thought Corin made a suggestion. Do you see where the top arrow is? It's where Gardner Street meets Marcy. The city actually owns that triangle of land there that is a small park, and there's a fence behind it. If you go that way, it's a fairly new light colored wooden fence. And so one thought is that could be a really interesting location because it sort of is it's very visible. It would be silhouetted against that fence. It's plot land, and Corin controls all the adopt a spots. So he said, you know, he would take care of it, and it would make sense to be there. It's a smallish area. There is a sidewalk there. So, you know, children and adults could come close to it and in a reasonably safe way. And of course, it's right across the street then from a place where visual arts will be. So there's some real interesting things about that possibility, as well as the Children's Museum, the South Meeting House area itself. And then on the next location, where Marcy Street meets South Street, that triangle that is raised, which again allows for visibility and kind of an entrance to the south end. So it's again a possibility, a fairly safe area, and visible from a lot of different places.
That's where all the political ads.
And that's where the political ads
Yeah.
often go. But it
And-
might be nice to tame that down and have something attractive there.
So I like that.
Child don't like it hard.
So, and then, obviously we talked before about, are there some places in Prescott Park? So, you know, I think our task, and in a minute, Deborah, I'll just call on you to see what you want to add to this, but our task is to identify, it doesn't have to be one location, but it can be a couple sites that we would recommend to the city council. So yes, Lenny.
So just a comment, since it's a ferry house, it's child-centered or would appeal to kids. So I think it should be accessible to kids, not accessible as in a climbing gym, but so that they can easily get to it. And that
That's hard.
that
That's
triangle
hard.
there
Yeah.
is visible by car. But the traffic goes kind of fast there, you know, going to get your wine, cheese and fish, you know, before before the market closes. And there's not really a crosswalk there, I don't believe.
There is
No.
not way down there.
No.
But it would be nice to have
So
something.
it would
like
look
that.
attractive. by a
Something
car.
at some point, you know, one
Yeah,
of the
not
other
just
things
political
Corin
signs.
and I talked about is the idea of having sculpture in adopt-a spots in different places also moves art out into the neighborhoods, which
Yes.
over time is something we should keep in mind. Why don't you go back and Lenny, what do you think about that other spot?
The PMAX spot, I know it's going to be a future thing for kids doing art, but that would be kind of, the kids doing art would see it. And those streets are very narrow. There's not places readily to park on that road. You know, there's a lot of stone walls and I don't think there's any parking on that road. 'cause
There's
it's very-
there's not on the road, but
narrow.
there's parking for 20 cars
Yeah.
around.
Around the meeting house.
Yeah.
In the,
Right.
in the meeting house parking
Yes.
lot itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if, so you would have to be purposefully going to the meeting house to see it,
Or
to
walking,
there,
You're walking, you walk right
walking
by it.
by.
right? So I kind of fall back on like Prescott Park is open, you know, where the flower gardens are or something is open and more accessible for families with young kids to
That's true.
wander into it. Whereas other places, you've got to go there, park there. Or in the case of that triangle, which would look cool from a drive-by, I don't think little kids could easily access it.
Okay,
What?
I just wanted to ask a question about the Gardner and Marcy spot because I didn't realize that that was public.
I didn't
Yeah, I
either.
didn't
Yeah.
either.
It's very, very visible.
Yeah.
And there is a sidewalk right there. But did the city plant it recently? Do we
No,
know?
a person, Corin told me his name, a neighbor asked for permission to plant it.
Ah,
Oh,
It's very nice because it's lovely.
it is
Yes,
beautiful.
it is. I just didn't realize, but it's newly planted this year. It has
Yes.
tulips, which it didn't before.
Yes, because the neighbor thought it looked kind of bad, so he asked to take care of it. He adopted it.
Wow.
And that's walking distance from Prescott Park, very
Right,
easy.
so that's very close to
Right.
Prescott Park.
I really like the idea of art outside of the park as well, to spread it around a bit.
Deborah and Mary, you've listened a little bit to our discussion. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, first, it's joyful that we are at this moment where you're making recommendations of where it can be. So we are most appreciative of that. I think it's interesting, though, that you have made no recommendations for Pierce Island, for more towards where, you know, children would play or go into a woodland area, I will call it, to either walk with families or whatever. I mean, all of your recommendations, we are 100% good with. Its, you know, town council's decision. We will oblige. But that was where we started. That's all. Just saying that's where we started with a recommendation that would be more towards that area. I think the Marcy Street one, from your description alone, I'm not familiar with it exactly. I'm happy to prance out there tomorrow to go in and look exactly where it is. But if Kate's acknowledging that it's in a good spot and gives us also a little bit of proximity to where people would be passing, or we could acknowledge it for the annual event, that would be great too. But again, unless Mary differs, it differs from my opinion. I think whatever your recommendation, we will make happen.
I just had
Mary, you're on mute, I think.
She is.
There you go.
Sorry, I apologize. Thank you. Yes, I'm echoing what Deborah is saying. It hadn't even occurred to me to consider those other locations going up Marcy Street. And as with some of you, I was not aware that that little corner was a public space as well. I know it well.
Oh, good.
It's a really charming little spot. But just, I had a question because having seen the sculpture, you know, the proportions of it, etc. Have you guys considered any spots on Pierce Island at all? Or are you reserving, I know there's a intended installation going on there sort of toward the point there near the river. But I was thinking even closer to the playground at Pierce Island. But again, we are so grateful that you guys are considering this and offering us some different options.
You know, I wonder, I think one of our concerns is safety for the sculpture, also safety for kids. But I'm wondering if there's a place near the pool that would meet that need.
Or,
Yeah.
you know, you got me thinking when you said, place where, you know, where kids are going to be, and you suggested Pierce Island, but what about Mill Pond Park? There's the playground, but then up above it, there's all these wooded trees where fairies would live, of course.
Right.
Whenever I bring my grandkids to 4th of July and we sit waiting for, 2 hours after we've claimed our spot. You run around those trees and, play hide and go seek, and there's beautiful rhododendron bushes. It's kind of across from City Hall. And there's the dog park up there
You
too,
mean,
but,
Langdon Park?
um,
Well, the
It's
south,
off of Junkins Avenue, in other words.
there's
That's-
the playground
that
there,
one.
but up above the bank of the playground, there's a beautiful, trees and rhododendron bushes
Mhm.
where.
That's another idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kate.
The other option is Haven Park. It's Haven Park where for the south end, people think of it as the park where you can let your dogs run free. And
Right.
there is culture there already, but it's in one corner. But it is wooded. It's a wooded park and a lot of people in the neighborhood use it. And Friends of the South End even uses it for its annual dog event, like dog parade.
Mhm.
So, if it were on the other side, but I guess that's another park in the neighborhood.
Yes, right.
How important is it for it to be near where the Fairy House tour is? Is that important at all, or? Good question. Yeah.
I think it has some import.
I do.
Yeah.
I think it does.
And it may be worth mentioning that our sponsor who
Paid for this.
commissioned this
Yeah.
piece is located directly across from the park, but it just made sense to us in the beginning, but we are open, as we said, to considering other locations, and I think, again, taking into consideration the size of the piece, et cetera, it's not huge. We don't, as some mentioned, don't want to encourage kids to necessarily climb or go on it. So, it just, it's, it needs to be figured out.
So given that it's wood, to have a way that it's visible also, I think, is important. So someplace where you don't overlook it, but it stands out in a way.
Mm.
I just had a couple of just more background questions. I'm sorry if this is going back, but it's still the same sculptor, correct? That we from last year?
Yes.
Same artist.
Same
Yes,
artist. That's who
correct.
did it. Yeah.
And then my other question is are you going to have a plaque or something there?
Yes.
Okay, so there'll be a plaque for it.
100%. It'll be on a piece of granite, so it will not touch the ground. It needs to
Got it.
be, it can't be touching the ground. So we will put it on a piece of granite. There will be a plaque either embedded in that piece of granite. Mary shared with me a piece that she saw most recently in another park where the plaque was actually embedded into the granite. We can do it that way, or we can have a freestanding sign that's next to it on a steel post kind of a thing. So whatever you folks are gonna prefer, we will do, but yeah.
My other question is, I guess my other comment is, it's not that big. And I'm
Nope.
worried about if it goes to someplace like, if it goes to Pierce Island, you aren't going to see it. It's just, I love that little park where it is because I think it will be highlighted there and showcased. Because I think that, to me, is what I'm hearing is your really goal, is to showcase it someplace
Yes.
near the South End where people are going to be able to see it and appreciate it. And I'm
Right.
assuming that you're going to advertise it or talk about it
Yes.
as the ferry, as the ferry tour is going to be there. So it's an easy, super easy walk to there. Either side to me, either that or at the community center would be fine to me, just someplace that it's close enough, but not overpowered. We're kind of, the Pierce Island got me only for the fact that we're talking about, we have a sculpture going in probably in July that would so dwarf this that I think it would look, and I hate to say the word puny, but I think it would look puny.
Yeah, I'm with you.
You want this highlighted.
Yeah. I
So
think
what the place that you're leaning to is the one, the Marcy Street with the little plot of land that a resident planted, is that the one you're leaning to?
But I'm thinking out of this conversation, we might want to, and with you also, not necessarily decide tonight, but it
Yeah.
sounds like we had at a few places. We happen to have a meeting in 3 weeks, because our May meeting is early. So it feels to me like we should take some of these ideas under consideration, let people and yourselves also ponder them. And then at our next meeting, make the list of what we think are priorities. Just because I don't think, I think Jen is right about Pierce Island, but we hadn't really been thinking about Pierce Island. It's possible that there is someplace near the
Could be.
pool, for example, where you could, you could showcase.
I also, I mean, I think at one point we talked about the flowery kind of gardens in Prescott Park. And, I mean, you can't have people kind of walking through the flower
Yeah.
beds. And
Yeah,
that's
they don't.
biggish space, but I mean, fairies live under flowers and their flower leaves. And I think that's such a beautiful area in itself that something woodsy could possibly add to it.
Yeah.
So how about this suggestion? See how you like this. You have made a terrific list. And since we have the sculpture in our possession, it's not light as a feather, but between the two of us, Mary and I, could move it from each one of these places and take a picture or take, see how we are feeling about it and then share it with you in that next 3-week period. And maybe that will help city council as well to say, oh, we really like it in this location instead of just giving them a list. What do you think about that idea?
Yes,
That's
Mary,
great.
what she.
Oh, okay.
And whose car?
We've already had it in a car, so it's possible. It's possible. You like that idea? So that's where we should start?
And I think we should look at the Pierce Island area near the pool,
Yeah.
though I do like the idea of it being near and Haven Park for the reasons that you described.
Yeah.
I was also gonna say at the meeting house, it doesn't have to be on the porch. I mean, there's a nice garden in the front.
Yeah.
There is a garden in the front. It slopes.
It slopes. You'd have to,
Mhm.
whatever granite you used would have to.
To be the right shape. Yeah, yeah. All right.
And I mentioned it to Russ Grazier. He was very enthusiastic about the idea. The one
Oh.
thing about that location is it's going to be undergoing construction for a while, and it's going to be a while before they sort out everything there. So it would put it off. It doesn't mean that it couldn't be relocated, at some point. Though I know it'd be nice to get its permanent home, but
Settled.
Yeah.
yeah, the idea of photographs of different places is great.
Yeah. Chris, could you?
I
say-
think that would help a lot to understand the sense of scale and proportion and what we're dealing with.
Cool idea. The corner, Gardner and Marcy.
Gardner.
And actually, I just a plug for those maps. I hadn't used those maps before. The new map of the city, do you see every little green thing? It's like a tree planting.
No.
And then you can see little dotted lines. I mean, you can't see it there, but what city property and
So
other,
in that corner.
it tells you so much. They're great maps to use. It's just right on the website. It's geocoded.
So
So
do you-
maybe you guys can give us that list again, mark where through your discussion, you think are priorities. Marion and I will take those this next 3 weeks to position, take some pictures and be ready for you in 3 weeks to share.
Yes.
do we have a list of that?
I think from our discussion, if anybody has another idea of that.
Created an entryway to Portree Island. I don't know if there's the trees up there, but everyone goes. Not everyone, but that's a focal point.
It's not very attractive. That doesn't mean it couldn't be.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, most
Yes, thank
sincerely.
you. Mhm.
Yes.
Great.
All righty. We will see you in 3 weeks. Yes?
Thanks.
Temporary art guidelines.
Yay.
Good.
Does that mean we're signing off?
We're good? Okay, just making sure we're good. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. We really appreciate it. Have a good evening.
You
Bye.
too.
Thank you for
Yes,
your work.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
So hopefully this gets our discussion and what we had talked about it, oh my goodness, a while ago.
A while.
A while ago. So if you don't remember, do you have those?
You had passed out.
I
and have
passed
an
them last
extra
time.
Copy. There's one extra copy.
We can share.
Oh, yeah.
You found it? Yeah, we passed it last time.
The dog literally ate the lead.
I have my copy.
I have mine.
So, but I can just, if, shall I read them just to go, to
Yes.
be sure?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's it.
You can share?
And pause after each
Oh, well,
one.
then.
to-
Okay.
Here one, then.
We'll
There
share.
we go. We'll share.
We'll share, since we did it anyway. So
Oh,
the big question that we had when we first started this was the length of time. So we said that temporary public art is defined as a short term, and we highlighted the short term installation, and typically up to a year, renewable if the art is in good condition. And I think that's pretty much how we ended that discussion on time. If people still feel comfortable about that.
I wonder if you want to say typically no more than 1 year.
Yeah.
Instead of up to, so you set the boundary of it.
Okay. Do people feel comfortable with that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Then a date for the deinstallation must be submitted. I think that's pretty understandable. And then Park will have the authority and responsibility to manage and enforce the designated deinstallation date. So that kind of makes us the guardians of that to make sure that it gets done. And I think we just need to have that so somebody's got an eye out on it, if that makes
And
sense.
that's acknowledged from everybody, by everyone from the get-go. That we're the meanies.
I think it's written correctly, but I just want to make sure we're managing the date. We're not managing the deinstallation.
Correct.
Right.
Managing to and enforce the deinstallation
To
date.
Date.
That makes
Is,
sense.
do you want to say?
Or
You could change it to say date of
Of,
the.
oh, yeah.
the
okay.
date of the
Yeah, that way.
the
it's
designated date of it deinstallation.
Yeah,
very-
that's
that
good.
makes
Okay.
it Totally not unambiguous.
Got it?
Okay.
That's why we do this. Then the next one is temporary art must follow the applicable criteria of permanent art, public art, excuse me, including all the applicable permits. Make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Then temporary art must be maintained by the sponsor or sponsors or responsible party throughout the public display period. We just want to make sure that the maintenance of that is put onto the onus on them, whoever that them is. And then the budget for the temporary art must include the deinstallation costs because that's not going to fall onto the city. And then if the temporary art becomes a permanent work, it must go through another review process. So if something, we want to last it for less over a year, then we can renew it if it's in good condition and excellent. The one question I had on that is it becomes a permanent, then the maintenance cost falls to the city, correct?
Well, it depends on if the temporary art is like a private thing,
Then it would fall to,
it falls to that person. but
okay,
If we decide to do a temporary art piece, yes.
what I'm saying is if it becomes a permanent piece,
But even if it's let's say Mark McNabb's permanent pieces, we're not maintaining them.
okay,
It's really the owner.
the owner, okay,
And so, we own a limited selection.
okay.
Jen, do we need to differentiate between if it's going to be renewed for perhaps another year versus becoming permanent?
Oh, that's a good point.
Right? Because it says typically up to 1 year, but renewable if the artwork is in good condition. So what if it might last for just 1 more year, but not become permanent?
Yeah, that's,
Well, I thought we just changed it to not more than 1 year.
well, that it's
That's one, but it's renewable.
typically no more.
Still a reference to the renewability of the.
Well, one time, is that your?
Is that
we
what you're thinking?
I
we
don't-
didn't really, and I guess my question then too is, and thank you for thinking about that, because it's like renewable for how long?
Mm.
Yeah.
Because we didn't say anything about how it's renewable for what length of time.
Because we did talk about it last time about the shark. you know,
Right.
Which is still lovely. So that's lasted quite a bit.
Well,
more.
that's a really good example because that was intended as temporary.
Right.
Right.
I wonder if, when I think of bullet one and the last bullet, if after 1 year, it goes through the review process. So the shark could have come to us to say, look, it looks like it's lasting. We'd like to keep it there.
Can we do that?
Can we do that? And so that we don't try to, it becomes, it goes through the process after 1 year. Otherwise, you could say, well, I'll renew it another year and then another year. It's like sidewalk obstructions, and all of a sudden, it's like, it's been a year, it's been 2 years.
So
Are you
have-
saying there should be a limit to how many times it's renewed?
Well, or if it's up to 1 year, it's temporary, and if they're gonna keep it longer than that.
Then it becomes
through
permanent.
Okay.
process.
So after 1 year, the artwork goes through another review to become a permanent piece,
If
If.
still.
if in
desired,
good
if
condition.
in good condition and desired.
And decide, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hold on, hold on.
So like with the shark, who would have taken that? Because it's on a business, like it's on
A
a
business.
business. So would the business be responsible?
Yeah.
They're probably not gonna do that.
So,
I mean, it's all about preventing these things just lingering and nobody,
Taking care of.
right.
Right.
it's like the whale wall is such a perfect example here,
Yeah. There's that wonderful piece. It's over on the side of the Red Rover Creamery now that
Yes.
is deteriorating.
Right.
And it's just sad that it's deteriorating.
And
But the wall's deteriorating. It's not just the paint.
I'm
Right.
not-
the black and white pictures.
Oh, of course I
on
will.
Cup of Joe.
Oh, they're starting to.
Some of those.
Yeah.
But hold on.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
this, is this what I'm hearing? I just want to make sure. 'Cause you talk faster than I can write. After 1 year, the artwork goes through another review process to become a permanent piece if it is still in current condition, in good condition
And desired.
And desired.
and desired.
So we're basically saying, either put up or shut up, either it's
Right.
temporary or permanent.
Right. Yeah.
So my question would be, will people see these temporary guidelines and say, you know what? Let's just go through the temporary process because it'll be easier. And then once it's up, it'll be much easier to go through the permanent process in a year. So will they see this as a gateway to getting something done?
Is there something, are you concerned about that?
Only if it means that we get things maybe the committee wouldn't have had as much scrutiny towards initially. And then,
We're sort of stuck with it. Is that what you're
yes,
saying?
that's my concern is that, or that they didn't have enough of a maintenance budget, or they didn't, because they didn't have that level of scrutiny because it was a 1 year project.
But we would say, like your creamery example, we would say, look, you've got to repair that. We can't approve this. You've got to repair that
And
wall.
actually, I think that maybe we can change the language and the way in which it reads, because the way we're transcribing what we've said, it says after 1 year, the artwork goes through another review to become a permanent piece. If it is after, I mean, I would put that very conditionally. That it's
It's a
possible, there's the
yes.
possibility
Yes,
that.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's not an
Yes,
automatic.
it's not.
Yeah,
Right.
because this implies, okay, great, you're
Yeah.
gonna get it approved.
And we want to do it more as an exception rather than.
Right.
Yeah.
So after 1 year, the artwork goes through the goes through,
Has
Yeah.
an option.
Has an
as an
op-
option
there is an option for the artwork to be,
I'm
to
sure
go through another review to become a permanent
Permanent
piece.
Yeah.
something like that,
you know, or
yes.
there's an option, or it's possible that we can hack that out.
The shark is interesting because that's in very good condition still.
And I wonder how many years the one by the creamery was good. It was good for quite a few years and then it
Yeah.
started.
It
fading.
started to peel.
Yeah.
It's probably 20 years. It's a long time.
Well, when was, that was 2008, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was not aware.
so that's quite a while.
Yeah, so we'll have
But
to say.
discourage
And type it
people
up
from, if
and
they felt
I'll-
that they were
I'll
gonna
be
be
able to
responsible, like with
bark
that,
it out.
with the murals around town. Who spearheaded that?
That was at the time, the Museum of Portsmouth Art or Portsmouth
Oh,
Art
it was the
Museum.
modern art?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And it was an initiative for truly temporary art. I don't think there was any intention that they would last as long as they have. But I'm not sure that, I don't know what the deal was with people. Because they were all on private property. And so I don't know if the private owners, when the Marple and James building changed hands, the private owners painted over that one. I think some private owners just decided to keep it, but I don't think there was any agreement of any type.
Yeah.
That's like the tiger at
Yeah. First of all, let me say, you guys did an incredible job out of that very wide-ranging discussion we had.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how we go after this one. But it's so,
A while before we get it.
well, we have to get the language right. And
Yeah.
this is so helpful.
Yeah.
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 And I'm
then
sure
we're
we'll go
gonna
through it
see-
again.
Well, and then we'll see how it works in practice and
True.
revise it again. if we
Of
need to.
course.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just every case is gonna be so different.
At least we have a baseline.
Yeah.
That I think was the whole point, because this came up as a result of, oh, we don't have anything about temporary.
right.
It was about the mural across, the
Pollinator.
the
Yes,
pollinator
if it were
mural.
gonna be on plywood or something.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
And
so,
I wonder if, just in talking about maintenance, if we need to spell out who's responsible for maintenance with, at some point, not in this meeting, not just with temporary, but with
with
it,
everything.
like a more general discussion, like just with Bohenko Gateway Park.
Yeah.
You know, I guess if it's a city park, that's the city
Yeah.
that will be observing that and letting us know
Yeah.
if there are issues. But like even private art, if people didn't, keep it up.
It may be something when we do reviews of private, like we did of Terrence's piece that's for the side of the Newbury. We might want to make sure there's an agreement, in that case with HDC, for maintenance, because we bring it up, but they're more of an enforcement. So next steps, we'll see this again and before posting. we'll-
Oh, absolutely.
That's good.
Thank you for doing that work.
Yeah.
Happy to do it.
So Bohenko Park, Ernie.
Okay, so Bohenko Gateway Park, we've been meeting to talk about the best way, as we, the Street Life event is gonna be there August 13th. And I think I reported last meeting that we met with Ben and he's just totally open to making this all about art, the event, and with a focus on public art. And so we really just want to take advantage of that opportunity. And we were talking about like a process for a second piece. And one idea that our little group thought was kind of a good one, and Lenny, I think you'll be interested in this. When we had the review committee for Endeavor, which Lenny was on, there were 3 projects that came to the top. I think we had about 7 projects that we interviewed the artists and looked at more closely. But we were just talking about maybe we could revisit, you know, one of the projects that has already been vetted by that review team and take that approach rather than, you know, opening up a whole new RFP, which is, you know, just so much work. So I'd just be interested in what people think about that. And then maybe, you know,
It wouldn't just be any piece, it would be up the top.
yeah, the
rated
top
pieces.
top 3 pieces that came in. And I mean, they were beautiful. They really were.
Certainly,
What those are or not yet?
Well,
Yeah.
you know what? I want to ask, I wanted to kind of get your sense first, and then because
good idea.
I don't want to put them out there
In public.
publicly. Because if someone, you know, I would want to
Yeah,
reach
yeah,
out to
yeah.
the artists
Yeah.
and ask them if it's okay to share with this group.
Oh.
I think that makes
So-
complete sense.
Make sure that they're still interested in.
that's
Of
the
course,
the
yeah,
artists
yeah.
may have, the artists
And,
may have.
you know,
moved
maybe at the
on.
next meeting, I could come back and we could, or before then, we could share them with you.
I mean,
And-
one idea, one reason for this is if we can partner with the chamber on raising funds for it, it'll be a lot easier to raise funds for something that and say, this is what it will be. You know, you guys did a masterful job before raising funds for a concept, but that was within the 400. And I think having something that people can tangibly understand would go there, and would get people excited. Would be an important feature.
Yeah.
And it also it's a different kind of thing. You know, we've done open call for some. Do you see any downsides to it? I guess
I guess just thinking about the artists may have moved on to another project, so we might call them and they might say, well, since I didn't get the original project, now I have all this other work
Sure.
lined up.
So
That's a
timing might be a
possibility.
challenge. Yeah, schedule.
And I guess I wonder, do we have the same criteria for this that we had for,
Oh, well, that's a
that.
good point.
That's a good question.
We need to we need to go through that ourselves
Mhm.
just to make sure.
I mean, I don't just mean the criteria that we, you know, the thing that we've been working on for the past, whatever, year and a half. But I think, you know, just like, is that what, I mean, I don't know, I don't know what you know, I really don't have the details of what the RFP was for that. And if that's really, then is that what we are looking for in this case? I mean, it could be different or it could be the same.
And I could share the RFP.
Well, that would be useful
Yeah.
to look at, actually.
I think that'd be helpful. One thing that really struck me in doing some reading in the book by the public art person that we Pomeroy, is that she almost never did an open call. Almost everything over decades that she did was commissioning individual artists or asking designs from a small pool of artists. And that the
Huh.
open call is something obviously that governments do, but that galleries and private folks rarely do.
Yeah, it's
It's interesting.
imperfect. That's what I found after being involved with that process. Because people, you know, the artists just put their heart and soul into it.
Sure.
And it's so much work. So.
But do you think, I mean, that's an interesting point, but do you think that that's something that we could possibly, you know, that's not really, is that instructive for us in how we should proceed?
Except we always have to know enough. I mean, we're spending public money, so.
So we can't just say,
Yeah, for
oh,
us,
we
it's just a-
know someone great. who
Yeah,
could-"
exactly. Yeah.
I just had a question about the park itself. We've always talked about this being a sculpture park, but I think it might be important for this committee to go take a real critical look at this space and determine where it makes sense in the space to place additional pieces. Because you don't want it to start looking like you've just plopped down art in random
That's right.
places
And it's also very related to the piece. And so one advantage of knowing these pieces could do in conjunction with what you're talking about, to be able to say, where would it optimally go? Because we kind of sense what it would look like. Much like our conversation we just had. You know, it's so much easier to come up with a lot of ideas for the Ferry House location once we see it, you know, and know what it is. So it sounds like people are interested in entertaining the possibility
yeah.
of finalists.
So how about I will send the RFP to everybody and are you comfortable if I reach out to the artist, the two other finalists, and just say, we're considering, be very non-specific about it? Are you still interested in being in, consideration?
Yeah. I would be comfortable if you put it in that tentative way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because I mean, again, thinking about how people become invested in their work, it would be really horrible to disappoint these people
Oh.
for a second time. That would
Yes,
be
yes.
really,
Yeah.
it's very.
And I wonder if I ask them if it's okay if I share, I think I'll ask them too, if it's okay if I share their concept with this group.
yeah.
Are you a little uncomfortable with that? or-
I mean, again, just thinking,
Well,
how people are invested, to reject them again is really sort
Yeah,
of
let
crushing.
me ask this, and this is maybe a Sean question. Might we do that in an executive session with the idea that it's the 2A about reputational risk. So we might do it in an executive session. So it's not like we're saying it to the public. I think that would be reasonable.
Yeah, I was gonna say something like that, but also I'm not sure I would get in touch with the artists yet.
Yeah.
I think I would, since.
Should we do it first? Should we?
I
see it
think
first?
that making sure we're really interested in their pieces before we get them all revved up and then pull the rug out, potentially, that we should do that in executive session, and then if there is real interest in those pieces, in one or both of those pieces, then we could reach out to them.
Yeah, okay,
I
that's a
think
good,
that makes sense. Ellen.
yes.
Yeah.
And do we know where the funds will come for
Well,
this?
That's the other part of it. We're talking about fundraising and how we met to discuss that. And we have some people who are willing to help us out fundraising, with experience in fundraising and help us get started with that. I mean, ideally, we'd like to raise a good portion of it before August.
Yeah.
So that, we announce that we've already got,
A base. for it.
yeah.
But that's the whole idea with the partnership with the chamber, being willing to help with that so that, we take, because I think that's our only way to do this. We have identified some grant possibilities, as well as it would be some corporate and private fundraising. And then as Ernie said, in August, we have this great opportunity with 300 people there to make the pitch.
Yeah, if anybody has any ideas for fundraising, grants that might be a good fit, let us know.
With all the money that's now not available.
Yeah. Yes.
I know. It's gonna be, I mean, we'll try our best, but yeah, we gotta get the money.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking before we go to the artist and say, are you still interested? Then if they say yes and they get excited and we say, oh, we don't have any money,
Yeah.
Well, but
which comes first?
I mean, but I think, there have been people who have indicated they have an interest in helping to support more in the park. And
Great.
So just a side note, were the projects that the other two were about the same cost?
It's
So-
spread.
They were, it's similar. They were similar. I'll have to revisit that, but,
I mean, I'm just looking at, are there big swings that we have to worry about one way or the other?
no, they were similar in cost.
Okay.
But less than the Endeavor?
Somewhat
Well, the
less.
Endeavor ended up being more expensive than we thought
Right,
because
that's right.
of the cost of the foundation. So, they were similar in
To
the
the
original cost of the Endeavor.
Okay.
Yeah, similar. Maybe one was a little less, and then the other one might have been a little more, and then he downsized it because it was high. Trying to remember it now. Yeah, I think one was less and one was a little more.
Okay.
So at the next, so you'll share the RFP. At the next meeting, it will go into executive session to look at the two options. And pick up the discussion from there. I like Mara's suggestion. I wonder as we look at them, that we would keep our guidelines in mind. So that we would be kind of doing two things at once. We'd be looking at the sculpture just from the how it fits in the park. As well as, of course, that fits within our guidelines, so that we'd be using our guidelines to have our discussion.
And I think another question is, you know, when P&H 400 put that money towards the park, it was a maritime theme, you know, with the albacore being behind and being on the water. And I guess the question is, do we continue with that? I think that maybe is something that park,
Yes, we should.
you know, I'd like to, because I was connected to that, but it's, you know, it's a bigger question.
It also helps with what Kate mentioned. It helps to tie things together
Yeah.
in a fairly small area.
Also, if we went with the ones that were runners up, they were already
Because those,
themed.
yeah, anything that was submitted for that had the maritime theme.
But then does that mean that we're saying that everything in that park from here on forth is going to be maritime, or is there other
I guess you could always
aspects to
change it.
Portsmouthness?
Yeah.
Maritime, water. I mean, think of the themes that came up with our Pierce Island. They could be fairly broad. I mean, maritime might connote a narrower thing than just water.
Yeah, it could be history, it could be nature,
We already
It-
have birds flying there.
like the maritime theme was really, and in the RFP, we specified that we're looking at this very broadly.
I think it also depends on how the type of art you're looking at. I mean, so you could end up with something very modern that could be maritime theme, but doesn't necessarily look
Maritime.
maritime. I mean, this is the, you know, I keep thinking about the Gateway Park in Quebec City, which is it very similar, like much bigger, but similar. And it has a lot of more modern pieces that people can interact with as you're processing down this long entry Gateway Park.
Yeah,
So,
I went
but then-
to Tower Botanical Garden in Boylston Monday, and they're just opening a new public art exhibit that's very cool. It's all things that move with the wind, and it's really beautiful.
Where is this?
It's in Boylston. It's a Botanical Garden, Tower Hill,
In Boylston,
Mass.
Yeah.
It's like an hour and 15 minutes away, I think. And it's a beautiful spot. I had never been there before. But it was a really interesting exhibit, and it was just going up because they had no signage. So I said, you know, I want to know more about the artist. It was just really gorgeous.
But that's an example. Wind could be a maritime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sound.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like we have a plan for that.
Oh, and then just, I was gonna say one other thing about the street life. We're gonna meet I reached out to Ben and we're gonna meet with the Streetlight Planning Committee to talk about how we can infuse art and public art into the event. So if anybody's interested in being a part of that, they're setting up a meeting in the next couple of weeks.
Street light, did you say?
Streetlight, that's the big dinner they're having in
Oh,
Bohanco
okay.
Gateway Park. So if anybody has any ideas, it's just an opportunity to get the word out about public art
Yeah.
in general. Maybe just, if you want to go to the meeting and brainstorm, let me know and I'll send you the information. Or if you just have ideas you want to share.
So here's the next part of Bohanco Park. And I think it's the next slide. Bob Thorson is interested, as you know, Bob was a major supporter for the endeavor. And he, in his wife's honor, Sue's honor, he would like to do an artistic bench and help support an artistic bench.
This is not the,
It's the other one, previous.
oh, the other one.
Yeah. And he asked me about it. He's asked Sija Chin to see what design she might come up with, because she has done some benches and Bob said that when Sue was there, if you remember, Sue was quite ill at the time when the I think was it the codfish was the last thing that she, no, it would have been the Endeavor.
Yeah.
And there are benches there, but they didn't have backs on them. And she was so uncomfortable. And so he wants to, so these are not but these are things that Sija has done in other places. So you
Very
can
cool.
see her style and, they're like in the one in blue, there are like 4 places you sit, how the way that cut is. And so he wants to help support, he needs to get a price from her, 1 or more benches that would be complementary to
Wow.
Endeavor. And
Are you thinking of that instead of
oh no,
or in
not
addition
instead
to?
of the other, but in addition to, we don't know what these cost. So I mean, we have to understand all this before we know what we can do, but
Those are fabulous.
Sija is both doing a design, but also then getting a price, and Bob knows he'll contribute to it. We'll see how much it is. But I said I would bring it to this group so that we could be thinking about, and when you think about now, we've got the codfish, we've got Endeavor, a bench that might sort of form 3 pieces there, a bench that would have the same feeling of Endeavor, and might be blue if the codfish might tie the 2 together, open to ideas. Sija is working with some themes from Sue's life that would be part of the cutouts.
Wow.
So I think it really helps to fill in that park, and again helps with some unity of design. But we obviously, there are no commitments. We have to see the design, we have to see, and again, take it through our process. We have to know the price. Installation clearly is going to be a cost, because these are going to have to be well anchored.
But that brings up the point of, I think when we get all of this, we have a road trip, to go out and just go, okay, what this is, how big would this be, and be actual in the park, because
These feel big to me for our park.
oh yeah, but I have no idea the scale.
Exactly.
And who's like the expert on that kind of thing? Like, I just think that's such a good idea to make sure that it's all, complementary. But I wouldn't know.
Site designer, architectural.
We've got Alyssa.
Alyssa.
Alyssa is
This would be the perfect
Just
person.
as that background, okay,
This would be great.
okay.
She's not.
So that's also like, all these things are sort of in there right now, but it's important that we kind of start thinking about it.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
Good. All right, what do we have time for? We probably don't have
I was
time.
gonna say it's already 6:30.
Yeah, we don't have time to look at the garage. We do have time, though, to talk a little bit about thoughts about the rotating art exhibit, considerations that we want to put forth, issues that we see, problems we need to solve, ideas that we want, so that we have a really good plan to present back to the city manager of how we would go about this. So things like, you and I talked about this.
Well, security, that's an open space.
Yeah.
So,
Liability. I told Ernie I had an artist friend who had an exhibit at a local education site, and her work, several of her works were taken.
For what?
City Hall is open.
Yeah.
I had some work hanging in the 100 Market. Where above the jewelry store that's there, and
Yeah.
Janae McCartan used to
Yeah.
curate it. Now I think it's in it. But anyway, I had some work stolen from there. There's no one guarding it, but
Were those were not hung in a way that locked them on or anything like that?
evidently not.
did you get it insurance? Do you get reimbursed for that?
No, even if you donate art, like, cause I get asked to donate all the time to different, and I'll donate a couple of pieces a year, but like your tax write-off, it can only be the cost of your
Of
material,
materials.
not what you would sell it for.
Yeah. So security liability.
How
Wondering
about,
if we can install a camera in that space. I mean, because there's a camera in the
Right.
chambers, and so, and that backs up to the room right there where we manage all of that.
That's a great idea. So this is the kind of thing we want to
Yeah.
Yeah.
talk about, so we come into this with our eyes open.
So
what
what
about-
different than the art that's already there? Isn't there art in the?
This is
Or-
in the lobby area,
Oh, okay.
in the,
Yeah.
in the ante.
I guess my question is, what's the time? Like, is this for like, it goes back to the whole discussion of temporary art.
Well,
Is
how-
this for how long, what's the length of time that we're going to do it in?
That's what we should.
Like,
don't-
is it 6
don't-
months?
At least a quarter, it would
Yeah.
seem to me, maybe 6 months, so that it's maybe 3 a year, 3 exhibits a
Yeah.
year or something like that.
It kind of goes back to, go back to the cost of, okay, so once you do that, then you're going to have to repaint the walls because you have whatever security system that you're going to have. Is that going to be
You could have a hanging
It's
system.
gonna be this
that-
hanging
the
system.
hanging system?
I think you have. to-
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have that. So it's all going to be art, it's all going to be paintings and prints and photography and,
That's a
That's
question.
hard.
Could be textiles
Right,
that
could
could
be
hang
textiles.
from.
yeah.
I mean,
But no
we don't-
sculpture or nothing that's more 3D kind of
Well,
thing.
I mean, we should
think about that.
think about that.
Yeah.
Sculpture,
Are
you
there-
have
are
a
there-
skill.
Have a blank slate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get nervous because years ago I used to share an office with the gallery coordinator where I worked, and it's a lot of work. So I was suggesting that the exhibit stays up for a long period of time. The other thing that we talked about is maybe working with a group that's already active, like the
Partner.
Art Around Town. And I reached out to and kind of getting their thoughts on it, if they're on board with it, what ideas they have. And I reached out to Ben, and they do meet periodically, but they don't really get a good turnout. He said it would do better to do an
Just-
email to them and just say, this is something that's being considered. What are your thoughts?
A good
Yeah.
person to reach out to would be Amanda Kidd, who
At the,
manages
at the,
New
Yeah,
Hampshire
Art
Art Association, because they do exhibits like in
Oh,
Dover and
Yeah.
Yeah.
at a number of different places, and
Yeah.
the exhibits obviously rotate. some of them are, they do an exhibit at the Chief and up at Lake Sunapee. And Carol Von Loon is the gallery manager in charge of the rotating, but Amanda comes up with all these different themes and, people like that would be good to talk to.
And
One thing
their
we also
experience in
said
that.
is, we would like it to be Seacoast artists, because this is our opportunity to really showcase local. Doesn't have to be people who live in Portsmouth, but at least
Right.
Seacoast based.
I think it's important too, the city already has a relationship with the New Hampshire Art Association, with the Sheaf and the
Sure.
Center. So
Yeah.
So
How
my,
do you think about the Art Around Town group? You,
Well, there are commercial
they-
galleries there too.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Different.
I go to all of those events. I have to say, it's a great thing that we do, but it's not that the art around town actually organizes the
Right.
shows themselves.
Right.
They all individually
Do their own
organize
thing.
the shows. But, when I think about the major nonprofit institutions that organize it, it's 3S, New Hampshire Art Association, and Portsmouth Historical Society are the three that do the major nonprofit part of that.
so but that brings up a question. If you partner with Art Around Town, do we open up the gallery at night on Friday nights for that?
No,
No?
it'd just be City Hall hours.
I think from my point of view, it's kind of looking for a partner to help, because it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if, the city would like to see this happen, but managing that's gonna be a lot of work. And it sounds like, right now that would have to come from this committee. Is there a way?
The New Hampshire Art Association might be
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah,
very
I
good.
mean,
Right.
They have a whole criteria, like you have to, if you want to have like a solo show or a two-person show, they have a whole submission. You have to have your statement of purpose and your samples of your work, and like all of that is so well established. But
We
they have
probably
juried shows. so.
Need to, just, again, I'm thinking of openness.
Mhm.
We wouldn't want people to have to be a member of the.
Oh,
New
no,
Hampshire
no,
Art
no.
Association.
No.
I think that would be
Right.
one.
Right.
And I'm sure they'd be open to
Yeah.
that.
But a lot of their shows are open
To
to everybody.
The other alternative is you could ask different nonprofits that curate these shows to do one show a year. So, and you could rotate or a couple of years. So you could rotate through organizations and you could give them,
Right.
this is your time frame for your show at City Hall.
Yeah.
But when you talk about art around town, back to your point, Kate, a lot of them are commercial galleries that,
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And these can't be.
which are
for
good
sale.
galleries,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's a
Right.
Maybe keep it
different than a
I
nonprofit.
mean, it's a different group. I mean, a different
audience.
Because it would, then there'd be, they could curate the exhibit and they would,
They would hang it too.
yeah, if
Yeah.
it was an art organization, if it was a museum or whatever type of organization.
So I'm happy to sort of write these up so we can reflect on this as a list, as something that we would, I think, present back to the city manager. Here's how we'd like to go about fulfilling this request and make some of the appropriate contacts. And your point about different types of art is something we need to think about.
And I would make sure that if we do create a list of organizations to curate shows, or
I'm sorry.
that we include, if we create a list of organizations that could curate a show, that we should include the Portsmouth Public Library Board of Trustees as one of them, because they have our art collection. So asking them to do that, I think would be nice.
I mean, and maybe the schools would,
Right.
And I think we have to think about a security system for that, and that will be a whole different piece, so.
and who's gonna organize it?
Yeah, right.
I think
Exactly.
that's-
There's
I
a lot
wouldn't-
of work before we're ready to share.
Also,
this.
I would say less is more. And we need to have a little control of this, because I could see if, I mean, curation is all about not putting too much up, and an organization might be tempted to like have pressure to overload, and really even a few really well-chosen pieces in that room would be very effective.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, be mindful of the schools already have set shows during the year. And I think
Yes.
it's a lot to just produce those shows.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. And the library does that with them too, so that is,
Yes.
but yes, it's a lovely idea. So my garage examples will have to wait for another time, but in the meantime, Ernie has, and I put them in there, taken these incredible photos of this garage in Sarasota that
Oh,
where every floor is painted to represent.
The
like,
culture of Sarasota, like
It's
one floor, they have an opera house, so one floor is Madame Butterfly and, is opera. And the ballet is one floor, it highlights all the cultural assets of Sarasota. They're so beautiful.
And it was not expensive.
No, I mean, so it's been 15 years,
Yeah.
right? I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
And, but
Today.
it's really beautiful. And like, you remember where you parked your car.
I parked at Madame Butterfly, right?
Yeah.
But when you see these, they're just stunning and, but there are lots of stunning ideas for garages, so.
We got 3 minutes.
So is there anything else? We meet again soon because of the. of the-
is it okay to, I have something I'm dying to share with you, but it's really tangential.
Do.
But when you were talking about the wind park, who was it that was talking about a wind park?
Oh,
Okay. So I heard this thing on NPR and it was about missing someone after they die. And then there's this whole, I guess, network around the world of wind phones.
Mhm.
And it's a rotary dial phone with a cord and they're affixed to a tree. And you go and you dial up the person who is deceased, whether it's long deceased, and their voice is supposed to be carried on the wind. And you can sit and talk to them and tell them all the things that either have happened or something you need to repair with them or something you never said to them you wish you did. And I was listening to this and I was utterly fascinated because just had my 92-year-old uncle die. But they were talking about how it started with one person and it has spread around the world, that there are wind phones and your message is carried by the wind. But I thought it was just a
Kind of
beautiful
like
idea.
love blocks,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Oh,
So-
I have a lovely picture of love locks from Tokyo that I took last Friday with the sky tree behind it. And they have a little plaque. They actually, in a few places on this fence that's on a bridge, they have little plaques that talk about love locks. And then there's people have hung the locks around them. So I found it
But
very
kind of in a
interesting.
curated way, is that?
Yes, they're almost in a heart in a few places. And I found it very intriguing that they're encouraging this in just on this bridge in this location.
Hmm.
So
Oh.
I will send around the picture
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I'm sorry for being late. I keep having memorial services on Wednesday, so I had a memorial service and ran a little late, so I'm sorry.
So, motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Wait, who moved?
Good.
Lenny,
Lenny.
yeah.